Hey, what's going on, guys? Pineapple Sway here. Today I'm bringing you guys another Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League video. If you like what you see, please consider liking and subscribing. And today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've covered once already back in August, that people still seem to be a little confused about. And that is basically, is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League actually connected to the Batman Arkham universe? Now, I made a video about this back in August talking about, is it canon? And, the short answer is, yeah, it is canon. However you want to see that, see it as it's unfortunately canon to the Arkhamverse, or yay, it's canon to the Arkhamverse. Now, it opens up the question of, something I still see all the time is this game actually really connected to the Arkhamverse? Is it really canon? So on and so forth. Something that I still see a lot, and not to like diss on people, it's totally, a valid question, and really just something that gets brought up a lot, is people seem to get confused on really what's the true sequel to Batman Arkham Knight. As we all know, Gotham Knights came out in 2022, and a lot of people still ask me, myself, is Gotham Knights, a sequel to Batman Arkham Knight? And Gotham Knights has no correlation with the Batman Arkham universe. However, playing both games, Gotham Knights feels more like a sequel to Arkham Knight than Suicide Squad feels like a sequel to Arkham Knight, if that makes any sense. And, a lot of people think that Gotham Knights is sort of like the universe connector, like it takes place after Arkham Knight. Maybe it's because they share the same name, maybe it's because it gives that iteration that, hey, Batman's dead, maybe it is set in the same universe. But Gotham Knights, actually just has nothing to do with, the Arkham series, and WB Montreal made that clear as day during, early development and, during, when they were pushing out the game and trying to get people to buy it. And, still to this day, people like to question, is Suicide Squad actually connected? Is this game canon? Because, for myself, after playing it again, because, back in August, at that point of time, I only played the story one time, but now I've played the story again, I'm playing the game a lot, and, it does open a lot of questions, like, is this game really connected to the Arkham universe? And, to answer it, like what I said, in short term, yeah, it is connected, it is canon, and, you can view that as a bad thing, you can view that as a good thing, it doesn't really matter. However, what I like to bring up is, something that I wanted to add with this video and talk about that I find a little interesting is, knowing that this game kind of explores, the realms of the multiverse. Is there like a scenario out there where they could pull the card of, oh, Suicide Squad was actually in another universe, it was in another multiverse. It's in the Arkham universe, but it took place in like another dimension, it took place in another universe, so that actually never happened. And, to make do with that, the end of Arkham Knight, although it was pretty much inferred that Batman was still out and about doing, what he, was doing, being the Demon Bat, time jumping 5 years in the in-game universe from Batman Arkham to Suicide Squad does open up a lot of questions. And, for myself, it's, yeah, this game is connected to the Batman Arkham universe. Now, with that being said, why does this game feel so out of place? Well, it's pretty simple. I've talked about this and covered it a lot. And, there's a few things that are out of place, like what I mentioned, Batman's death, Superman just showing up, Flash showing up, Luthor showing up. But there's actually, answers to these that they were really trying to build upon this universe. But with poor execution by Rocksteady, that's kind of why it feels out of place. Really, the best way to summarize it is in the true Nightfall ending, after you 100% the game, it's shown in the final cutscene that Batman is still out there using Fear Toxin. And years back, the game's director, Sefton Hill, even confirmed it's Bruce operating as Batman. The Robin and Catwoman DLCs also referenced the ending, referring to him as a ghost Batman, not yet known as the Demon Bat. So Bruce is fully operating as Batman and going after criminals still. No reason why he wouldn't also be doing other stuff. He'd definitely come back if there was a situation he was needed to get involved to save the day. And he was still trying to figure out, the Fear Toxin. He didn't really know how to use it. But he even mentioned at the end of Arkham Knight that he needed to become something more. So the persona of Batman basically died at the end of Arkham Knight. And that's kind of what the whole story and the whole, emphasis of the game was this is how the Batman died. Not physically in Bruce Wayne, but like, his persona, the Batman persona died in Arkham Knight, with him basically becoming the Demon Bat. However, it's tough to expand upon that because the ending in Arkham Knight was so perfect. So when people found out that he was coming back, they should have done something else entirely. And also, too, if you notice in, promotional images for the game and even in the Batman trailer, Batman was in his rebirth outfit, which basically a rebirth is like a reborn version of Batman. That's kind of the whole story of the rebirth. And to sort of emphasize the rebirth, the symbol, his bat symbol, has a gold outline, which this was changed last minute in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'm not really sure why, because the suit looked pretty good. And, to sort of point this out and prove this theory is if you use Deadshot's Batman outfit, it still utilizes the old model that Batman was originally going to wear, and you can even notice the original gold outline on the Deadshot outfit. Now, the rebirth basically would have obviously represented that, this Batman is reborn. Typically, when rebirth happens, he becomes, rebirth as Terry McGinnis. Batman gives up the mantle, becomes Terry McGinnis. But in this case of Rocksteady's rebirth, it's him becoming the Demon Bat. They could have explained that a lot better, but they just unfortunately didn't. And another thing people like to bring up is Deadshot. Deadshot was white in the Arkham series. He's black in Suicide Squad. That's really about it. And they even bring this up and joke about it in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And the in-game explanation for this is actually in the prequel comics. There really isn't an in-game explanation. It's basically that Deadshot came from Earth 2, which we don't really get the explanation to why he even got there, or how he got to Earth 1, which is known as the Arkham universe. And for some reason, Green Lantern was tracking him down, had him on file. It's kind of, there's a lot of ifs and buts, and it doesn't really connect well. And, another thing, too, is the Justice League. The Justice League is not referenced once in the series. Superman is referenced in Asylum, City, and Night. And then Flash is referenced in Arkham Knight as well. And, another thing to bring up is Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor actually calls Batman at the end of Arkham Knight because he has interest in wanting to acquire something from Batman, purchasing something from Batman. Lex Luthor even seems to know that maybe Bruce Wayne is Batman at the end of Arkham Knight. And then Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy also just comes back out of the blue as a kid. But, if you played Arkham Knight, if you go back to where Ivy died, you can actually find a plant that is sort of sprouting. So there's answers to everything, but I get why people still question to this day, is this game even connected? Because, a lot of things don't make sense. And, people like to bring up the Assault on Arkham movie, the cartoon. However, Sefton Hill said that this wasn't connected to, the Arkham universe, although we all know back in the day they did say that it was connected, as I think King Shark died in the Assault on Arkham movie. I can't exactly remember. But people like to say, it still feels out of place, this and that. But, there's many references to this, and that I just think people just never thought that Suicide Squad was going to be the next game in the series. And in all honesty, maybe they could have had a better hint of maybe that Brainiac was coming. I really have no idea. And, even now, after the game's ending, it still just feels out of place. Like, I'm just kind of reading comments off Reddit as well, and just on the internet, Deadshot's white in Arkham Origins and Arkham City, and he's black in Suicide Squad. How is that possible? And, yeah, that's a really good question. It's explained in the prequel comics, something that people probably just didn't buy because they just weren't really looking forward to this game. And, with that being said, even with the Misfreeze, the new Joker, it's because they're all from different universes. This game tries to explore the multiverse. And I think, they kind of did a poor job at it, but they kind of may have saved themselves in a way, because they could probably pull off something saying that, oh, this universe actually took place on Earth 2, because people also like to bring up the redesign of Harley Quinn, that she looks nothing like how she did in Arkham City and Arkham Knight. It's almost like a completely different take on the character. And, you know, in some odd way they could pull out the card of, oh, this was actually this took place on Earth 2. Brainiac's invasion took place on Earth 2. Earth 1, the Arkham universe, is still grounded, and, you know, Batman is actually dead in that universe. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing things, you know, out to you guys as sort of like ideas. But yeah, you know, it's just still weird to me that, you know, these questions still just kind of get asked to this day. And even with Batman Arkham Origins, you know, Batman Arkham Origins set this up a long time ago that Amanda Waller wanted to make a task force X. You know, she came to Deathstroke recruiting him at the end of Arkham Origins, and that's technically canon to this game as well. That's technically canon to the universe. Even though Arkham Origins has its own problems, that's considered, you know, to be canon. You know, a few years ago it may not, but Arkham Origins was kind of that sort of building block to really get that going, because we all know originally that WB Montreal was working on this Suicide Squad game, but then Rocksteady, you know, picked it up last minute and then decided that they wanted to work on it instead. And, you know, even, you know, back to what I was saying with the whole persona of Batman being rebirthed into the Demon Bat, you know, it's even explained at the Batman Museum that the League convinced them to revive the persona of Batman and fight evil more openly. You know, so Batman ultimately ends up joining the League right up until the events of Suicide Squad. And, you know, with that being said, I think people are really always going to be confused on what exactly is, you know, connected. How is this game connected? Why is it connected? You know, I think we're always going to have questions because obviously, you know, the game was a disaster. It didn't do well. And really now it's just a matter of waiting to see what the plans are at Rocksteady and what they want to do with this game and how they want to continue. You know, as I've said, you know, in numerous videos, I'm a firm believer that, you know, this universe is going to continue. Just might not continue in the way we think it's going to. And yeah, you know, I wish I could have, you know, had better explanations to why Suicide Squad, you know, is canon, but there really isn't much. It's just little niche references that if you played the games, you know, full on, you would understand. I get why people are frustrated. I get why people get confused thinking that Gotham Knights is really the true sequel, because, you know, it's just this game, it does feel out of place. There's really no and ifs or buts. It's out of place. That's really the only way to explain it. Anyways, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, do you guys agree with, you know, this game being connected to the Arkham series? You know, are you still confused to this day about this game being, you know, connected to the Arkham series? Do you think Gotham Knight should have been a true Arkham Knight sequel? I want to hear your thoughts and your opinion down below. As always, it's Pineapple Sway. Peace out, everybody.